mission, if you choose to accept it, is to find the lost tribes of Israel. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Welcome to the God Culture, where we urge you to challenge tradition, as 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us, "Prove all things, hold fast that which is good." We do not intend to be confrontational, but to compare what the Bible really says versus the traditions of men, which Jesus himself rebuked. Jesus said to the Pharisees, "Full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition," Mark 7:9. Now, for the moment many have been waiting for, we begin a series of videos which will identify the landing of the lost tribes within the Philippine archipelago, including migrations, and where we can, we will propose our thoughts on which tribe of Israel they may represent. We feel firmly that we have identified landing sites and people groups, but we cannot say within each grouping all are Hebrews. That would require much more, but we can take it that far. There are 7,000 islands in the Philippines and about 1,000 dialects, so this is a massive undertaking. But we'll do our best to identify whom we can, but we assure you, we may miss some, and we may add to this series for years to come as information unfolds. Again, set tradition aside. Check out what our research has uncovered, and then go out and prove all things for yourself. This is the only way to guard your heart, lest you be deceived. This is your mission if you choose to accept it. Before that, not sure how many of you are reading the comments section, although it's very active, so many certainly are, but there is some good stuff in there. Every video we have released has overwhelming support, especially from the Filipino community where it's involved, confirming our findings, whether it be from other angles that we did not think of, or more so stories passed down from their ancestors, which is huge evidentiary support. So this isn't just us spouting off here, but there is much to learn from comments and from regular folks who are coming in and speaking up in the comments section. It is phenomenal. We learn a ton from it, and it has led us in many ways to where we are now. It's amazing. De La Cruiser 11 wrote, for instance, "Sambatyan sounds like a Filipino word." Well, yes, actually it does, and we didn't realize this, but these are the kinds of things that we learn from people in their languages. Manaya Man says Sambat means Sabbath, worship, Samba. Yan, there. Well, no wonder the rabbis couldn't find it in their language. It's not in their language. It's in Filipino. How about that? That is letter for letter the same exact word that's used in the Targum of Jonathan, Pliny the Elder, the Talmud, even the Ethiopian reference. Isn't it? Same, letter for letter. Exact. Wow. AIEDNS says, Sabbat, in our native dialect, means meet or to meet. Bangtan, Sanya Elndan, Sabbat, in Bisaya, means to join. Guru and Fetalino, sorry if we got that wrong. We have this in Ilo as an Ilongo saying, "Indi na mag sabat." That means you are telling somebody to stop or rest, like Sabbath, from giving opinions, clarifications, etc. Man-G. Sambat, Tagalog, noun, point at which a road or river forks into two. You mean like the Pisan River, which splits and surrounds the whole land of Havilah, where there's gold, and the gold of that land is good? Sounds interesting. And Froika Buling. Sambatyan is like two Ilocano words combined. Samba is worship or give praise. Tayon is like the pronoun tayon in Ilocano, which means us. Just like saying in Ilocano, mangan tayon, let us eat. So it might mean let us worship. Look at the similarities of this reference and the one we shared earlier from Manaimans. These are two different dialects producing the same final definition, though differently. That is serious confirmation of a more ancient word and connotation that is being morphed into more modern languages. So we feel very firm now in our saying that Sambatyon is a reference to the ancient river which flows around ancient Havilah, the Pisan River on the bottom of the ocean floor running around the Philippines. Some ask, why not Malaysia? Well, it's not within the area surrounded by that river. And why not Indonesia? Well, because it's in Ham's territory to the south, not Shem's territory. And why not Japan? Because it's too far north and possibly even in Japheth's territory. The point is, these references, especially when you add the tropical reference, nail down very specifically the Philippines and no other land. We are fine to include whomever else ends up being included in these definitions. And we have included Kurdistan and Africa, for that matter. So, no, we are not hyper-focused on the Philippines, but the evidence leads where it leads, and we follow the evidence. Madi Burka, an Assyrian, confirms. In Aramaic is called Aret Duka, meaning ground of offering. On the thing you say Surat Ad Dukan, but you guys nail everything. Wow, thank you, Maddie. That is phenomenal confirmation because we are definitely not Assyrians and we're trying to cover areas and understand languages as best we can. And it's good to hear that sometimes we actually get it right. Well, hopefully most of the time. But anyway, Maddie's referring to the place in which the Israelites offered, the lost tribes offered smoke offerings. And in Assyrian, it means ground of offering in Aramaic. Wow, wow, wow. And we have a viewer wishing to remain anonymous who is always good for insight. She says regarding the Sea of Suni, South China Sea is referred to by Philippine teachers as West Philippine Sea. South China Sea, one and the same body of water. In this case, Yam, the Hebrew word, would apply both as sea and west. Wow. And you know what? The same is true of Hebrew because the sea is west of Israel, the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, that's why sometimes it is actually translated west. But most of the time, no doubt abundantly, it does mean sea. And then, for our river from Eden theory, which we prove Philippines to be the ancient land of Adam and Eve, where we believe Mount Arayat in the Philippines is where the ark was built, because it means earth covered in Hebrew, and the ark was lifted there. Not to be confused with the mountains of Ararat, which are the Himalayan mountains, not a standalone mountain, especially not the one in Turkey, which we prove. Arayat in Ilocano means to rescue. Wow. And that is where we believe mankind was in fact rescued from the flood. Wow, indeed. One last clarification. We have folks come into comments from time to time adamant that we are wrong, usually about a minor point or side note, but Nonetheless, we have all probably heard in school the Amazon is the longest river on earth, and we said it was the Nile. How could we be so uneducated, right? Well, because we read beyond the trivia into the actual claims. This is why we find so much. In this case, the Guinness Book of World Records, among several other sources, not just one, many, say that the Amazon is the second largest river on earth and the Nile is the largest. Because in order to claim to be the longest, the Amazon is counting the Par estuary, and we would no longer be in like terms. But we'd be a major pain on Jeopardy and other trivia shows anyway, because if they asked us who the oldest person to live on Earth was, well, we would not answer Methuselah, which is what their answer card would say, isn't it? But that answer would be wrong. Enoch is the oldest, and he's still alive in the Garden of Eden, in fact, so he's still on earth, not in heaven. Second would be Elijah, more than likely, who never died either, who we have no reference to where he is, but we would take an educated guess that he too is likely in the garden. Because to live that long requires a human being to be eating of the tree of life, as Adam did. And he would have lived forever, according to Genesis, if he continued to eat from it, according to Genesis. Before we begin, we also wish to cover the former name of the Philippines, which we hear often in comments as well. Many have asked whether Maharlika is a valid historical name for the Philippines, and we believe it is, as most lands have multiple names. Not a rare thing at all. Look at America, which is also known as the United States, which is also known as the land of the free. There are connotations. There are lots of different ways to talk about different lands, and it's usually a matter of perspective. But check out this perspective in what we believe to most likely be Hebrew origin for this word. Mahar, to acquire by paying a purchase price, endow, surely, to bargain, for a wife, to wed. What? Do you see where this is going? Leka, to, for, of you, indicating possession. Whose possession? His bride. So wait a minute. This isn't just a name. It's a description of a people, a specific people, the lost tribes of Israel, and his ecclesia, which has been grafted into the tribes of Israel, which together form his bride. Wow. You mean as in the bride of Messiah? Indeed. And notice the Hebrew laka, it sure bears a resemblance to the word lekoi, doesn't it? Ooh, we're going to cover this. Back to 2nd Esdras, and whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude. Can you think, by the way, of a more peaceful multitude than the Filipinos? We can. Unto him. Those are the 10 tribes, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters. Again, that's the Euphrates and then the Tigris, placing them in modern Kurdistan. And so came they into another land. Another land would be Kurdistan, by the way. But they took this counsel amongst themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. We're going to explain this now, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. Again, and we read, they will live as Rechabites. But just because we only see residual amounts of this after captivity, again, is no surprise. We had one guy saying Esdras was not in the King James. Look at the 1611 KJV as we've referenced. It is in the Apocrypha there. Therefore, it was considered scripture in some form. But if nothing else, it certainly is considered history. And that is how we are using it here. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. And we showed you exactly where we believe they crossed, in fact, and it fits. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood, till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. Again, a year and a half total journey, not all by boat necessarily. And the same region is called Arsareth, a reference to the land of creation, Ophir, Philippines. Then dwelt they there until the latter time. So they're still there. Because this was about 600 BC or so, and they will be there until the last days when they finally regather. And now, when they shall begin to come, see, the highest shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore sawest thou the multitude with peace. But those that be left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders, Kurdistan. Now, when he destroyeth the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, he shall defend his people that remain. Now, it's time to complete this journey. We covered all the way up to the landing point in the Philippines, which we believe there's more than one. We're going to cover one here, but we believe there are multiple landing sites, and we're going to deal with just the one particular landing site in this video. Why? Because it's the easiest to identify. We'll just be honest. Remember our historic reference from the Italian Jewish scholar Parasol or Pharisol. Notice he's a Pharisee, a Persian, and the P is an F sound as well. That's Persian, but we'll get there. We had set aside this reference, though, for this video, and now it's time. Others he places in the desert of Chabor, which according to him lies upon the Indian Sea, where they live in the manner of the ancient Rechabites. We covered that without houses, bayan ihan, right? Sowing or the use of wine. Nay, he enters the Indies, the Isles of Bengala, the Philippines, and several other places. The Hebrew word Chabor means to unite, be joined, to tie a magic knot or spell. This isn't about magic, obviously. This is the lost tribes. To charm. No, this isn't about magic. So unite or be joined. Compact, couple together, have fellowship with, heap up, join, self, together, lig. A rather generic reference, and no, we do not find a desert called Chabor anywhere in Asia. Wait a minute. I live in the Philippines and I have never seen any desert here, right? Some may be thinking that. Well, actually, this is what makes this one so simple. Because there is only but one desert in the entire Philippines. Do you know where it is? Near the northernmost tip of Luzon Island, the largest island, is the only desert in the Philippines by definition. The La Paz Sand Dunes is an 85 square kilometer, 33 square mile, protected sandy coastal desert and beach located in Laoag, Ilocos Norte in the Philippines. Now, this is Wikipedia's definition as a desert, not ours. It doesn't just look like a desert, though. It is by definition, and it is the only one we can find in the whole of the Philippines. Oh, and would you look? La Paz is two Hebrew words. If you are headed to ancient Ophir, what is the first thing you expect to see when you come from Israel originally? That's right, gold. But there was no gold in the desert, was there? And thus, in Hebrew, La Paz means no gold. But they found the gold, don't worry, as the largest gold region on historical record, which we showed you, is Abra, a Hebrew feminine variant of Abraham. Wait a minute. Abraham? How did that get there? Who would name an area after Abraham? Can't imagine. We're just warming up, though. These dunes have three names because they split them up in modern times, but they may well have done so by the landings, as maybe there were three consecutive landings there. Remember, this would have been a massive number of ships, and we know ancient Ophir had the ships and controlled the seas of Southeast Asia back then, even up until the time of Magellan, according to Pigafetta. The second area is Paoay, which appears Greek to us, meaning sacred journey. Oh my. And every year in this area, which is known as Laoag, basically in Ilocos Norte, they have a festival, which is why you see the large letters standing in the middle of the desert. People take pictures with, I imagine. See the arrow? Himala is a Tagalog word, and of all things, it just so happens to mean miracle. The third area is of this 85-kilometer desert is called the Suba Sand Dunes, and it also appears to be Hebrew. But not just any Hebrew, as the word Shuba-el means captive of God. We know the El part is God, so just Shuba is captive. So right here, at the landing site in the desert of Chabor, which is a generic term just meaning gathering, we have sacred journey, miracle, captive, and of course, no gold. Hello, I know those God culture people go just making stuff up again, right? I mean, anyone could pick out a word in a foreign land that matches one in Israel, of course, in Hebrew. Well, no, not only is that not true, but at this specific desert, the only one reported in all of the Philippines, where we found the historic reference that says that's one of the places where they landed. And then 4 Hebrew place names whose meanings all tie directly to the lost tribes. Are you kidding? This is not even possible. There's only one way that even this small microcosm of the landing, the desert, and the 4 Hebrew names that tie to the story is even remotely possible. If we found even one, that would be a miracle, Hamala, right? But don't worry. As always, we don't hinge just on one thing. We don't hinge on one line of logic. And this keeps getting more exciting. Here's a little history that also seems to coincide. It's called The Legend of Paoay Lake. You know, Sacred Journey Lake. Lake Suba, or Lake of the Captives. And it's called the Sunken Village. Long ago, there was a beautiful village situated on a verdant tropical land. The people living in the village were known for being simple, hardworking, and God-fearing. These humble villagers built a church out of their skimpy earnings to worship and show respect to their God. No, the lost tribes don't build churches, especially not Catholic churches, but the story is written by a Catholic source, so they infuse themselves. But nevertheless, you will see there is something to this story, perhaps. Years passed and the village prospered. The people became rich. Their wealth has been reflected through their ornate houses, extravagant clothing, and glittering jewelries. As pride lingered on every resident, rivalry also sets in. The people worked even more hard to acquire things more than the others. Gee, does that sound familiar today? Being very rich, the people forgot to respect God as jealousy took the place of goodwill. The church was no longer a place of worship, but it became an avenue to display the townspeople's vanity, which, by the way, happens everywhere where Catholicism breeds. So one would have to wonder if maybe that's not the intended purpose, but that's not something we're covering in this video. Whilst the rest of the village residents spent their lives in worldly competition, a couple remained simple and God-fearing. One night, an apparition appeared and told them that the village will be destroyed by a flood. The following day, the couple warned their neighbors and told them to revert for them to be spared from the flood. The villagers did not heed their warning but laughed at them. Sounds a lot like Noah, and likely portions of the story was copied from that. But that's okay. There's still something to this, and that's our point. They continued what they're doing and mocked the couple, accusing them of envy. That night, the humble couple heard a voice telling them to leave the village early in the morning. The voice instructed them to go as far as they can and never look back. Sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah, but that's okay. Most especially when they hear a loud thunder and noise. The next day, the couple prepared early and left the village. While on their way, they heard a loud clap of thunder, followed by rampaging waters. The villagers were awakened by their shrieks, and cries were resounded and died as they were submerged in a pool of muddy water. The fleeing couple was shaken by these cries and loud rumblings. Unconsciously, the woman turned back to look at the village, and in an instant the woman fainted as the husband tried to drag her, but they both turned into stone. Okay, we definitely are looking at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah here, so certainly it's been added to, but this something here at Paoay Lake really happened. As years went by, a beautiful lake emerged at the place where the village sank, and there is a village there to this day. You'll even find a church there sunken, and is now the famous Paoay Lake, the lake of the sacred journey. Now, this does not stand on its own, and not every reference that we share does, as we're trying to be comprehensive here. Many try to take one little point like this and say, oh, well, based on that point, I don't know that I believe your whole rationale. Well, that just is ignorant, because we don't rely on one story like this. But this is fascinating. Who do you think this is? That Yahuah God would respond in such a way? Well, likely the lost tribes. But the next part is going to give you goosebumps, because there is something very special about this specific area. Lake Paoay is home to Malaca&ntilde of the North, Presidential Palace, now museum. Malaca&ntilde of the north in Ilocano is Malaca&ntilde, is a presidential museum in Paoay, Ilocos Norte, Philippines. Forgive us, we're probably murdering all of these, but we're trying with pronunciations. It was the residence of the family of Ferdinand Marcos when he was the president of the Philippines. I know some don't like it when we mention Marcos, but this is not about politics. Forget that part of it. We're not covering Marcos's politics, just like we never covered Solomon's politics in Solomon's Gold series, because we didn't like Solomon's politics. He was not a good ruler in the end. He turned out to be evil. So we don't care about that kind of stuff because politics is not in our purview whatsoever. But we're not going to ignore this reference. They built this at this site where the lost tribes landed. Is that a coincidence? Well, perhaps there's more to this. Let's look at the name, especially the Ilocano name. Amay-inan in Ilocano means north. Simple enough. But in Hebrew, Hebrew, Amaya is derived from the name Ami, which means my people. Nan, Strong's 2608, means to protect. So, yeah, it's certainly north, but where he protects his people. Wow! How does that happen? I mean, one such occurrence, fine. But all of these are basically a flashing neon sign that says lost tribes slept here, right? You see, there's much more, even in this name. Let's look at Malaca&ntilde Palace, which we just saw in the Northern Palace, but look at the word. It does appear to be Hebrew. Indisputably, the official residence and principal workplace of the President of the Philippines, located in the capital city of Manila, and also the north, marking a landing site of the lost tribes? Yep. Let's break it down. Malak is a deputy or messenger of Yahuah God, an angel, ambassador, king in Hebrew. So is there any doubt that name has Hebrew roots? Let's keep digging. The next portion, the Hebrew name means brotherly or fraternal. In the Bible, this is the name of a member of the tribe of Manasseh. Wow! We didn't add that to that sentence. That's exactly what the reference from Find Judaica, a Jewish website, says. And anan, the ending is bring in Hebrew. And even the T in between in the words for the Northern Palace on the lake of the sacred journey is the prefix in Hebrew, T, identifies the subject of the verb as second person, masculine, singular, and the tense of the verb as imperfect. So check this out. Malaca&ntilde Amay-inan, bring the messenger of God from Manasseh to protect my people. Now, some may read that as Marcos, and maybe it is, but we are not saying that, because you will find this tribe in more than one place in the Philippines, and we don't know whether we can say Marcos was sent from God or not. But, you know, even Solomon, who was appointed and anointed by Yahuah God, did not prove out to be a very good king in the end. Yet he was anointed by Yahuah God. He took many riches for himself, and he really taxed the people. The Bible says he was hard on his people. Not justifying, but we still wonder if we even know that full story properly, especially with all the CIA disinformation. which usually bears out to have numerous falsehoods in our research. So, we'll render no opinion, but this palace is the story here. This name is not an accident. Someone knew what they were doing here. Someone spoke Hebrew and hid a message in this name for us. This is impossible from any other logical point of view, in our opinion. So let's look at Laoag, which is the city in this area in the north. Here we'll share a Filipino blog we came across, which is interesting and sheds some light on the situation. Clear or light, according to locals, is where the city got its name. They must be referring to the skies. The sky in these parts on a clear day is blue as blue can be. The weather, I don't know if it's just me, feels a lot hotter around here. Must be the reason why Ilocanos are darker than the rest of us. I once met an old man from Pangasinan who told me that the Ilocanos were originally confined in what is now Ilocos, but because their ancestors were industrious farmers, so see, we're getting a nice local historical perspective here from Filipinos, always looking for land to earn from. They found their way to La Union, Pangasinan, Isabela, and Cagayan. This must be true because I've heard of Negrents relatives that married Ilocano farmers. These men, my mother told me, were known to them as cicadas. Remember that word. We're going to vet that one. Seasonal farmers that worked the sugar fields of Negros back in the day. Cicadas. We'll look into that. But first, we covered the Hebrew definition of Laoag in Solomon's Gold series. It basically means to speak in different forms. Does that remind us of maybe Joseph? And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah? No, we said that wrong. But BDB Theological Dictionary agrees with a long list of more recent scholars who thought our name was a transliteration of Sapne Tef On, which means the God speaks and he lives. And Laoag in Hebrew means to speak. Again, this would be a stretch on its own. We'd agree, but add everything together, including within the names we covered, and it does appear to be a vague reference to Joseph and his son, the tribe of Manasseh. So we've seen those two references thus far. Maybe there's more. Also, perhaps this also refers to his brother Ephraim, but we do not find specific references to that. But when you look in Revelation, it actually does not any longer, at the regathering, separate Manasseh and Ephraim as two separate tribes. It combines them into one. Certainly seems to match here. Let's look at the immediate areas surrounding Laoag and see if there's a potential for yet more Hebrew. To the east is Surat. Oh, that's Hebrew indeed. Cut in pieces. Make cuttings. Pieces. Wait, didn't we see that Yahuah God warned that if the tribes of Israel broke their covenant with him, that he would, exact language, cut them into pieces or break them into pieces? Wow. And again, here's another tie we cannot ignore, as this is where Marcos was born. By the way, this is a sidebar. What date was Marcos born? September the 11th, 1917. Anybody wonder whether there was Marco's gold in the Twin Towers, or especially Building 7, which collapsed as the first skyscraper in all of history, having not been hit by any plane, but collapsing by fire, which doesn't happen. Just asking questions here. Moving on. The Padson River runs through this area. And if you look in Hebrew, Padan is the place where Rachel died. Rachel had two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. Benjamin is coupled with the southern kingdom, so that rules him out. He did not come with the 10 tribes of the north. He's in the southern. So he went into Africa, and we'll get to that soon. But Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, didn't we see one of the definitions that Manasseh especially is called out specifically? Odd. And then Shan. To lean on, trust in, support of trust in God. You don't have to agree with every definition, but by the time this all pulls together, it will be difficult to deny the conclusion. We are exploring every possible route and angle we can think of. Another area close by is Baltok, a primitive root properly to hide for refuge, figuratively to trust, be confident or sure, be bold, confident, secure, sure, careless. One, woman. Put confidence, make to hope, make to trust. And just south is actually a place called Sinai, with a T on the end, admittedly. You mean the mountain where the law was given from the wilderness of Sin and Mount Sinai? Wait a minute. You mean possibly connected to the land of the Sea of Sinim? Are we finding actual references to Sinim here in the Philippines? In one of the areas where the lost tribes landed? Could be. You'll see. But what about this name for Ilocanos that we mentioned earlier from the blog that we shared? Is there something to that? Sakadas. Sakah, Hebrew. This name derives from the Hebrew Zechariah, which, if you watch the Name of God series, we find out his name has the name of Yahuah God inside of it. It's actually Sakar Yahu. Yahuah is in the name. And that's confirmed by Strong's Concordance and many Jewish websites, in fact. There is really no question it is a U, not a V, which the V is actually a Yiddish infusion into Hebrew they call modern Hebrew, and it's not an O. But it either means has remembered, or to be clear, clean, pure, blameless, and das, knowledge. Has remembered knowledge, or better and closer, pure or blameless knowledge. Who would have such, based on such Hebrew words? Well, the lost tribes indeed. So Sakadas is yet another Hebrew tie to the lost tribes. But now for the big one. Remember the term used by Pigafetta and others for a tribe or people from the northern area of Luzon, on the western side, right where we happen to be covering right now, especially from the gold country, which we know Abra, the most abundant gold producing area in the Philippines. So let's review this. Magellan's contemporary Duarte Barbosa wrote that the people of Malaca in modern Malaysia had described to him an island group known as the Lequios, whose people were as rich and more eminent than the Chinese, and that traded much gold and silver in bars. You mean like the golden wedges of Ophir from Isaiah 13? Yep. They were melting gold into jewelry and bars long before the Spanish. If nothing else, Philippines jewelry was found in Egypt dating around 100 BC, so we know that is confirmed. Silk, rich cloth, and much very good wheat, beautiful porcelains, and many other merchandises. However, Barbosa was not the only one to mention the Lequios during Magellan's time. About a decade after Magellan's voyage, Ferdinand Pinto had wrote in his journal of the experience of his crew and himself after being shipwrecked on the Lequios. Pinto was traveling through the Malay archipelago at the time, and he described the Lequios Islands as belonging to a large group of islands, many of which were rich in gold and silver. You mean Ophir, Philippines? Yes. He mentions that at that time the Portuguese were familiar with Japan and China. In other words, they are not Ophir, and also with the island of Mindanao. So the Lequios Islands must have been somewhere between these two areas. What's in between Japan and Mindanao? Well, it also says islands. So, no, it's not Taiwan. It's Luzon and Visayas. Those are the islands, the Philippines. Furthermore, Pinto even goes as far as to give the exact latitude of the main Lequios Island. He states that it is situated at 9 north 20 latitude and that the island was on a meridian similar to that of Japan. We didn't do this before, but Pinto was being very specific in identifying basically northern Luzon, as you see on the screen, as the Lequios Islands. And Taiwan is not only one island, not islands. It's about 23 degrees. Therefore, it does not fit anyway. The Lequios were specifically located in northern Luzon, so obviously it is indisputable that the Lequios are none other than Ilocanos. And we just covered a couple of videos ago that Pigafetta ran into the Lequios from specifically Luzon more than once, especially when the Spanish ships were chased by the 8 junk ships as large as the Spanish ships and an armada of over 200 ships in addition. By the way, that would be called war. You could call Lapu-Lapu's forces killing Magellan as a skirmish, perhaps, but now you have a nation rising against an invasion. They captured the son of the king of Luzon, a Lequios. The Lequios, Lucos, Ilocos, Ilocanos, variously spelled all these different ways. It is the third most spoken language in the Philippines. The ancestors of the Ilocano people arrived in the Philippines by vire or bilog, meaning boat. They sure did, didn't they? The ships of Tarshish brought them from Assyria. And note, Pigafetta said they were called the Lequios when he arrived with Magellan. So no, that's not a Spanish name, is it? You will find such claims, but they are ignoring history. But wait a minute. Didn't you guys share in Solomon's Gold series that the Lequios were tall, bearded, white men? Yes, we in fact did, but let's deal with that. You'll love this. In Greek, in fact, the word leukos, which may be its origin, means white, bright, brilliant, as in brightness. Check this out. According to Documents 98 in Colección General de Documentos Relativos a las Islas Filipinas, the Lequios were big-bearded white men. They were only interested in gold and silver when trading at Ophir. Note, they were not from Ophir, but traded there. But that was in the days of Solomon's navy, right? The Hebrew word leuko means to gather, to glean. It resembles closely the word leukos. It will fit the men of King Solomon's fleet who gathered gold and silver, and there's a bust of a Phoenician to the left. So, indeed, I know, this looks like an issue, right? Because that guy is a big, tall, bearded, white guy, isn't he? Well, in fact, this is evidence of the lost tribes. What do we mean? This is good. Lequios was a reference to Solomon's navy, right? Who were they? Well, let's look. Scripture says, and Hiram sent in the navy his servants. Those are the bearded, tall, white dudes, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea. But wait a minute, they weren't the only ones in the navy, with the servants of Solomon, who were Hebrews. And they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold 420 talents and brought it to King Solomon. So, Solomon's navy was both big, tall, bearded, white dudes, so that is accurate. And those are the Phoenicians of Tyre, which we even show you a bust of. And it was Hebrew, Solomon's servants in the navy. So the term does refer to tall, bearded, white dudes, for sure. But it also refers specifically to, wait a minute, are you tracking with this? This is evidence that Hebrews didn't just come in the days of Solomon, as the Lequios, who didn't live there in those days. They visited and they left, but now they live there, which means these Hebrews came to inhabit the land. When might that have happened? It's evidence they returned at some point in history, which we pretty much know. And some of them settled in northern Luzon, where they took on the name of Solomon's navy, the Lequios. They were not Phoenicians or tall, bearded, white dudes, because Pigafetta especially says that Magellan's forces captured a Lequios, and he fails to even mention that he was a big, tall, bearded, white dude. Why? Well, because he wasn't. He looked like the Hebrew members of Solomon's navy, which looks like a Filipino or a son of Eber, which could be through Peleg or Joktan, either one. Peleg being Israel, Joktan being Philippines. Those guys were brothers. So the similarities would be there. Both are Hebrews. And we will prove that further in the Name of God series, as the next video is going to deal with the name of his people. Imagine that. This doesn't disprove Lequios, our Hebrew Filipinos, at all. It proves it. Cool. By the way, something several viewers have pointed out, and this ties to Solomon's gold. Hiram is a Tagalog word, and it means to borrow or ask for a loan, or basically trade. And what did Hiram do in Ophir? Yep, that's no coincidence either. There are so many of these. This is really easy to see, especially for scholars. Yet, crickets. They cannot debunk this series, but they also will not likely support its conclusions because it is not the traditional narrative, and we, without hesitation, will tell you the traditional narrative is wrong about Ophir, Sheba, Tarshish, the Garden of Eden, so many things, and the locations of the lost tribes. So they're stuck in old knowledge, living in a false paradigm, and that's sad. That's okay, though. We can all move forward and educate others, and it is up to us. A TV station is not going to pick up this series. It won't happen, more than likely. If it does, we'll embrace it, more than likely. But chances aren't great. That's okay, though, because we did have someone mention they were waiting for another source to confirm the God culture's findings, for instance, because the word requires 2 witnesses, and that is true. That is wise. That is being a Berean, right? However, we have given you more than 100 witnesses, including Jose Rizal, who tell you that Philippines is ancient Ophir. This truth is already established by 2 witnesses and many, many more. We're just finding it. And it was long before the God culture. This series is confirming these findings of others, not coming up with something new. So, what are the recorded origins of Ilocanos? I mean, we must know that, right? I mean, science has got to tell us exactly where the Ilocanos came from. Probably not. Here's one of those scholarly, beautiful entries that makes this definitely 100% clear, right? Because they prove things, right? Unfortunately, not. The origins of the Ilocanos, as of all Austronesians in the Philippines, are probably, well, that's definitive, isn't it? Probably. Good job, scholar. How about proving things rather than guessing? And if you can't, stop peddling crap, or at least say it's only a theory, which is not even likely true, which has little support, because that's what this is. In South China, from which they sailed in double outrigger dugout canoes about 5,000 years ago to Taiwan. That's funny. Have they ever found one of those double outrigger dugout canoes that are 5,000 years old? No. And when were ships in China? We'll cover that. And then later, the Philippines. Yeah, prove that. And Polynesia. Okay, prove that too. They don't. This was already proven wrong by chicken migration patterns, in fact, which we have shared in previous videos. But when did the Chinese develop their first ocean-going ship? In 900 AD. When did Chinese inscriptions say Filipinos arrived on their shores first? 300 AD. So, who discovered whom? Ophir discovered China, 600 years at least before China was ever even crossing the ocean, according to Chinese records, to go to Ophir. Wikipedia says from 300 to 200 BC, Not far off on the date, by the way, but it was actually 600 BC. A migration of Austronesian-speaking people from the island of Borneo arrived on the shores of northwest Luzon. Do they prove this? No. In fact, they can't even prove the ties to the language of Borneo and Ilocanos. Give me a break. So no, they just say it as they speculate on etymologies as well in most of history. This is all junk. This is not proven. Yet they write it as if this is the fact. This is what it must be. No, it's not. They were the most recent of the 3 waves of migration to the Philippines known as the Malay. Okay, so now there are 3 waves of migrations. Well, then certainly they should be able to prove at least one of them. But what documents say such? None. What evidence do they have of 3 waves of migrations from the Malays? None. Nothing. Before the arrival of these people, the inhabitants of northwest Luzon were a different Austronesian speaking people called the Proto-Malay group. Okay, so now we have Malays and now we have Proto-Malays. So it just keeps getting better and better. Yet, once again, do they prove this? No. Whom consist of the modern Tinguan, Isnig, Kalinga, Kankane, Bontoc, and other tribes collectively known today as the Igorot. Can they prove the Igorot came? No. From Malay? No. So they claim the Igorot and other tribes were the first to arrive, yet we will cover their origins, and they don't know exactly when they arrived. What they do know is that they built the rice terraces in Banawi about 2,000 years ago. And they have no other timestamp whatsoever. It really places their origin much before that. And that's after the journey of the lost tribes, not before. So we say there's a connection there, and we'll get to that. So, do historians prove Ilocanos were all already here? Not at all. None of this stuff is proven. They just say it. Here's another reference. Ilocano, also known as Ilocano and Iloco, is a member of the Malayo-Polynesian branch of the Austronesian language family. Again, they say that as if it is fact, but never bother to prove it. They just don't bother. It is the 3rd largest language of the Philippines after Tagalog and English. The name Ilocano came from Laoag, Bay. Ano, Spanish, native of. Thus, people of the Bay. Problem. Where did the Spanish part come from? Because the Lequios were already there in the days of Magellan. According to Pigafetta, he's already using the term Lequios. He didn't make that up. That was a local name. In fact, he even says that people of Visayas were the ones who called the people of northwest Luzon Lequios. That's where he got the word from in his own words. So, to then assess a Spanish ending to the name is absolutely fraud. That's the only way to put it. So no, we don't buy this native of the Ano part, but we'll go with it. Thus, people of the Bay. Okay, the word Ilocano originates from Iloco, archaic form, Y-loco, the conjugation of I, meaning of, and look, meaning bay, which means from the bay in Ilocano. Now, that part makes sense, so again, we'll stick with it for this reference. Again, we find the term in Hebrew and even Greek, long before the Spanish arrived. But let's play along with this possible definition, from the bay. Well, what bay are they from? Okay, if the definition was they live on the water, that would be fine. But this is saying they are of or from the bay. Look at the geography of the Ilocanos region. There's a bay in Pangasinan, all the way to the southern portion, but the rest of Ilocanos is on the ocean, not the bay. Now maybe that's okay, but what if the term from the bay is actually talking about the bay from which they departed at Debunking, Qatar? Now that's a bay from which they are from or of. That's where they came from. Just a thought. Pre-colonial Ilocano people of all classes wrote in a syllabic system known as Babayan prior to European arrival. What? Read that again. Prior to European arrival. So they were literate. They could read and write. How about that? Now, you're going to see references in history that's taught in schools that they may not perhaps have been able to read or write or anything. When the Spanish came, it was the Spanish that gave them reading and writing and education and religion and all of these things. And if it wasn't for the Spanish, oh my goodness, they were a doomed people. No, they weren't. They used a system that is termed as an abugida or an alpha syllabary. It was similar to the Tagalog and Pangasinan scripts, where each character represented a consonant vowel or CV sequence. When one studies the letters, they certainly look similar to Hebrew to us, but we're going to save that for an entire video on that subject later. But look at the word babayan. In Hebrew, ba means come, but look at these variants. Bayam means in the sea, like the Sea of Sinim. Babayi means in the house. Well, that's really close, right? Ba means in her, and bayan in Hebrew means an interval, space between, amongst the branches, to be joined with. You mean like a writing system? Now that is something. Ilocano is spoken as a first language by some 7 million people, primarily in northern Luzon, La Union, and Ilocos provinces, Cagayan Valley, Babuyan, Mindoro, and Mindanao. It is also spoken as a second language by possibly another 2 million speakers in the northern areas of Luzon as a lingua franca in trade, commerce, and everyday communication. Many ethnic groups from the northern regions of the country are more proficient in Ilocano than in Tagalog, the national language. Ilocanos became the first Filipino ethnic group to immigrate in large numbers to North America, settling in sizable communities in Hawaii, California, and the Pacific Northwest, and even Alaska. Many Filipino Americans are of Ilocano descent. They make up 85% of the Filipino population in Hawaii. Wow. So when you look at the migrations of the Ilocanos, these lost tribes landed in the northwestern portion of Luzon in the desert, now called La Paz Sand Dunes. They spread out over the entire north, basically forming the crown of the head of the woman, which we believe is the geographic outline of the Philippines, perhaps. They migrated further south into just north of Manila and into Mindoro and even into the mountain province and Baguio, and then Palawan and Mindanao. They then, as we read, were scattered among the nations, but they did so by their own choice, as the first to participate in the OFW programs in the U.S., and now to the whole face of the globe. Rather amazing that the first landing we locate pulls it all together already. And when we can, we will pinpoint which tribe we believe each people group is associated, but we will not be able to do so with every tribe, and we cannot promise we will find all of them either, and this will take some time. But the references surrounding the Ilocanos in definition seem to point to the tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph, which could very well, again according to Revelation, which does not separate the two brothers, but includes them as one tribe returning, Ephraim. But we do not find specific references to Ephraim necessarily in the things that we found thus far. This portion will be our theory, but up until this, we aren't theorizing. The lost tribes came to the Philippines, and we prove it. And we will prove some of the groups, and then we will theorize which tribe in most cases. This is the first installment of locating specific groups in the Philippines which represent the lost tribes of Israel. And yes, they are there. And we can say so with 100% certainty because we believe we proved it. We have many more to cover, and we will continue part 2 into part triple Z if we have to, as long as the information is out there and we feel we can prove it. This is important, and we are in the days of increasing knowledge, and we believe it is time we know where the lost tribes are, as well as the restoration of prophecy. We will probably upload part 3 next, which tracks the African migration of the Southern Kingdom, which we are close to releasing even now. And even as we continue to research the Philippines, we'll keep moving forward in the series because we want to get to the big question. If Kurds, Filipinos, and Africans are the lost tribes of Israel, then who are those guys claiming to be Israel today? We have tracked their origins, and this will shock many, but we will prove it, and much of that research is already close to being ready for release. Thank you for watching our Lost Tribes series. Please share this video with others and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the bell and view our website at thegodculture.com. Always remember to prove all things for yourself. Yahuah God bless.